There is something unusual happening beneath the surface of your soulmate's life right now. Something so private that even the people closest to them have no idea it exists. It is not a secret they intentionally created. In fact, if someone had asked them years ago whether they were hiding anything about you, they probably would have said no. Yet time has revealed something different. Somewhere along the way, a truth about you became locked away inside their heart. A truth they never shared, never explained, and never fully confronted themselves. For years, they convinced themselves it wasn't important enough to discuss. They told themselves it belonged to the past. They assumed it would eventually fade, like so many other thoughts and memories. But that is not what happened. Instead, the secret remained. Quietly, patiently, no matter how much life changed around them, it stayed exactly where they left it. Recently, however, something has shifted. They have started noticing how often their mind returns to the same unspoken truth. The more they try to ignore it, the more present it becomes. The more they push it aside, the heavier it feels. What once seemed easy to keep hidden now feels impossible to carry alone. And for the first time, they are beginning to wonder if this secret was never meant to stay buried forever. Because deep inside, they can feel that a moment is approaching. A moment when the truth they have protected for so long may finally find its way into the light. For reasons they don't fully understand, your soulmate has become increasingly aware of certain moments they never speak about. These are not the obvious memories. They are not the stories they casually mention or the experiences they share with others. Instead, they are the quiet moments that seem to belong only to them. Moments connected to you that have remained hidden behind years of silence. What makes this so significant is that they never intentionally chose to protect these memories. It happened naturally. Every time they thought about opening up, something stopped them. Sometimes it was uncertainty. Sometimes it was pride. Sometimes it was the fear that putting those feelings into words would make them far more real than they were prepared to handle. Lately, however, those private thoughts have been returning with unusual intensity. They find themselves revisiting conversations that nobody else knows still matter to them. They remember details that should have faded long ago, but somehow remain clear. A certain look, a certain exchange, a certain feeling that appeared during an ordinary moment and quietly stayed with them ever since. What surprises them is not that they remember these things. What surprises them is how much emotion is still attached to them after all this time. They thought distance would remove the significance. They thought life would eventually place those memories in a closed chapter. Instead, the opposite happened. The more time passed, the more those hidden moments seemed to gain meaning. There have been evenings when they sat alone reflecting on their journey and found themselves wondering why these thoughts continue resurfacing. Out of all the experiences they have lived through, why do certain memories connected to you still feel so alive? Why do they continue occupying space within their heart when so many other things have faded? At first, they tried to answer those questions logically. They blamed nostalgia. They blamed curiosity. They blamed the natural tendency people have to remember meaningful chapters of their lives. But the more they examined those explanations, the less convincing they became. The truth is that what they have been hiding is not simply a memory. It is the emotional meaning attached to it. For years, they managed to keep those feelings tucked away where nobody could see them. They became skilled at appearing unaffected, skilled at changing the subject, skilled at convincing even themselves that everything had been fully processed and understood. Yet deep down, there was always a part of them that knew otherwise. There was always a quiet awareness that something important remained unspoken. And listen to this. The silence that once felt protective is no longer bringing them comfort. In fact, it has started creating a different kind of pressure. The pressure of carrying something unresolved. The pressure of knowing there are truths they have never fully acknowledged, even to themselves. Every time they revisit those hidden memories, they feel the weight of everything left unsaid. Not because they regret every choice that was made, but because they are beginning to realize that some emotions cannot remain buried forever. Some truths become stronger the longer they are ignored. Now they find themselves standing in unfamiliar territory. For the first time, they are no longer asking whether those feelings exist. They already know they do. The question that keeps returning is much more difficult. How much longer can they continue carrying this secret without allowing it to be seen? Because what was once hidden safely behind silence is beginning to push its way toward the surface, and the closer it gets, the harder it becomes to pretend it was never there. What your soulmate is experiencing now is something they never expected. For years, they believed that whatever they were carrying would eventually lose its importance. They assumed time would naturally reduce its significance. After all, that is what people often hear. They are told that time heals, that distance creates clarity, and that eventually certain feelings fade into the background. Your soulmate trusted that process. They trusted that if they simply continued living their life, focusing on new experiences and new responsibilities, the secret they carried about you would slowly disappear on its own. But recently, they have been forced to confront a reality that challenges everything they once believed. Instead of becoming weaker, the truth they have hidden seems to have become stronger. Instead of fading, it has remained remarkably present. There have been moments when they found themselves completely focused on something unrelated, only for a thought connected to you to suddenly appear without warning. Not because they invited it, not because they were searching for it. It simply arrived. And every time it did, it brought with it the same question. Why does this still matter so much? Why has this particular truth refused to disappear when so many other things have faded with time? What makes this realization difficult is that they have spent years trying to be practical about it. They have analyzed it from every angle. They have searched for explanations that would make the situation easier to understand. They told themselves it was simply an unfinished chapter. They told themselves it was a temporary emotional attachment. They even convinced themselves that they had already moved beyond it. Yet despite all those explanations, the same truth kept returning, quietly, consistently, refusing to be dismissed. And listen to this. The turning point came when they stopped asking how to make the feeling disappear and started asking why it never disappeared in the first place. That question changed everything, because for the first time, they were no longer trying to escape the truth. They were trying to understand it. And the more they reflected, the more they realized that some things remain because they carry genuine meaning. Some feelings survive because they are connected to something real. Some secrets refuse to fade because they are protecting a truth that has never been fully acknowledged. This realization has been unsettling for them. Not because the truth is frightening, but because it demands honesty. It asks them to stop pretending they are unaffected. It asks them to stop minimizing what they feel. Most importantly, it asks them to admit that what they have been carrying is not a passing thought or a forgotten memory. It is something that continues to hold emotional weight in their life, something that still influences them in ways they are only now beginning to understand. The closer they get to accepting this, the harder it becomes to justify keeping everything hidden. They are beginning to see that the secret itself is not the source of their discomfort. The discomfort comes from constantly holding it back, from knowing there is a truth they have never fully expressed, a truth that has survived years of silence, years of distance, and years of attempts to move beyond it. And now, for perhaps the first time, they are seriously questioning whether keeping it hidden serves any purpose at all. Because when a truth remains alive for this long, it eventually starts asking for something more than silence. It starts asking to be heard. And listen to this, because your soulmate has reached a point where avoiding the truth requires more effort than facing it. For a long time, silence felt like the safest option. It allowed them to keep everything under control. It allowed them to avoid difficult questions and uncomfortable emotions. Whenever thoughts about you surfaced, they could push them aside and continue with their day. Whenever the secret they carried tried to make itself known, they could distract themselves with other responsibilities, other goals, and other priorities. But something has changed. The strategies that once worked are no longer working. The silence that once felt protective has started feeling restrictive, almost as if a part of them is tired of carrying the same unspoken truth alone. Lately, they have found themselves imagining situations they never used to consider. They imagine what it would feel like if they finally acknowledged everything they have kept hidden. They imagine what it would feel like if the truth was no longer something locked away in private thoughts and quiet reflections. At first, those possibilities made them uncomfortable. The idea of revealing something so personal felt risky. After all, secrets often survive because people believe they are safer left untouched. But the more they reflect, the more they realize that keeping this hidden has not brought them the peace they expected. There is now a growing tension within them. One part wants to maintain the familiar. It wants to keep everything exactly where it has always been. It reminds them of the uncertainties that come with honesty. It reminds them of the vulnerability involved in revealing something deeply personal. But another part of them has started asking different questions. Questions that refuse to go away. Questions like, what am I protecting by staying silent? And what if the truth deserves more than endless secrecy? These questions have become impossible to ignore because they strike at the heart of what they have been avoiding for so long. And listen to this. What makes this moment so significant is that they are no longer focused on what could go wrong. For years, fear shaped their thinking. Fear encouraged caution. Fear encouraged silence. Fear provided endless reasons to keep everything buried. But now they are beginning to notice something unexpected. The fear is losing its influence, not disappearing completely, but becoming weaker. In its place, a desire for authenticity is beginning to emerge. A desire to stop carrying the weight of something that has remained hidden for far too long. They are also realizing that the secret itself has changed over time. What began as something private has slowly become something meaningful. Is no longer just information they never shared. It has become a symbol of everything they never fully expressed. Every emotion they kept to themselves, every thought they dismissed, every truth they avoided acknowledging. And because of that, keeping the secret hidden no longer feels simple. It feels unfinished. Now, as they stand between silence and honesty, they can feel the pressure building. Not pressure from other people, not pressure from circumstances, pressure from within. The kind that appears when a person knows they are approaching an important realization. The kind that appears when the heart begins demanding a level of honesty the mind has resisted for years. And the closer they get to that realization, the clearer one thing becomes. The secret they have protected for so long is no longer content remaining hidden. It is moving toward the surface with every passing day. And your soulmate is beginning to understand that the moment they have been postponing may be much closer than they ever imagined. And listen to this, because your soulmate is arriving at a moment they once believed would never come. For years, they carried this secret as though it belonged in the shadows. They treated it like something that should remain untouched, something that could exist quietly in the background without ever demanding attention. But secrets have a strange way of changing over time. What begins as silence eventually becomes reflection. Reflection becomes understanding, and understanding becomes a truth that can no longer be ignored. That is exactly where they find themselves now. What surprises them most is not the secret itself. It is what the secret has revealed about them. For the longest time, they thought they were protecting themselves by keeping certain feelings hidden. They thought they were preserving stability. They thought they were avoiding complications. Yet now they can see that the secret was never really about protecting themselves from the outside world. It was about protecting themselves from their own emotions. Because acknowledging the truth would have required them to admit something they were not ready to face. It would have required them to recognize how much your presence affected them, how deeply certain memories stayed with them, and how significant your role became in their personal journey. Recently, a new level of clarity has entered their life. It did not arrive dramatically. It arrived through small moments of honesty. Moments when they stopped arguing with themselves. Moments when they stopped searching for alternative explanations. Moments when they simply allowed themselves to feel what they had spent so much time trying to control. And once they did that, something remarkable happened. The secret began losing its power. Not because it disappeared, but because it was finally being understood. And listen to this. They are beginning to realize that truth does not become less real simply because it remains unspoken. If anything, the opposite is often true. The longer something meaningful is hidden, the more influence it quietly gains. The secret they carried about you has followed them through different chapters of life. It remained present during moments of change, moments of growth, and moments of uncertainty. No matter how much time passed, it never completely left. That persistence has taught them something important. It has shown them that certain truths stay alive because they are connected to something authentic. For the first time, they are no longer asking themselves whether they should acknowledge what they feel. That question has already been answered. Instead, they are asking what comes next. What happens when a person finally accepts a truth they spent years avoiding? What happens when they stop hiding from something that has always been part of their story? These questions have become far more important than the fears that once kept them silent. There is also a growing sense of freedom within them, a feeling that comes from no longer carrying the burden of denial. The weight that once accompanied this secret is beginning to lift because they are no longer fighting against it. They are no longer trying to convince themselves that it means less than it does. They are finally allowing the truth to exist without resistance. And that simple act of acceptance has changed everything. Now they stand on the edge of a new understanding. They know the secret cannot remain exactly where it has always been. They know the truth has reached a point where it deserves recognition, not because anyone is forcing it into the open, but because it has naturally outgrown the silence that once contained it. The secret they never told anyone about you was never meant to remain hidden forever. It has been leading them toward this moment all along, a moment where honesty becomes stronger than fear, where understanding becomes stronger than uncertainty, and where the truth finally steps out of the shadows and into the light.